Welcome back to Troubled, and welcome to a guest that I've been trying to connect with for a while, which is All My Bad. I'm so excited. We have Infinity Metanoia here today. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, it's all good, baby. I'm so glad to be here with you.
We thought we'd bring something a little different to you, and
Uh,
usually I talk an intro, but like I can't even do you justice. So tell us who you are in our world, in our community, in Georgia scene.
I feel that after the program, I ended up with a bunch of different types of personalities, and I don't call it a disorder. I call it a superpower, and I ended up diving into the world, learning as much as I could, going out there immediately, after my 5 months in the program in Spring Creek Lodge in Thompson Falls, Montana. I was 17, turning 18, and then went out into the world to figure out what the hell it is, because I don't think any of us knew or were prepared. So
Mm-hmm.
at this point, I'm almost 34, and I have positioned myself as a facilitator. And at this point, my work going forward is really focused on bringing people together who feel like they lost their voice and need a voice of reason because they are perhaps in a place of subconscious programming that they continued on with from what they experienced in childhood. It's just basic psychology. I was fortunate enough to be surrounded by really intelligent people. My sister-in-law is a child psychologist and was there for me in my childhood, before and during and after my program experience. um, my father is actually a chiropractor, so that kind of catapulted me into holistic health. I became a massage therapist, a personal trainer. I developed a dance fitness class and did I actually went into the music industry for about 6 years right after the program, because I wanted to be a professional singer my whole life. I used to sing. The fun fact, they would allow me to sing for the girls at night before we fell asleep, even though we were on silence most of the time. I was given that special, I considered it a privilege to be able to use my voice in that way to comfort the people around me, and sing us to sleep at night, because we didn't get to listen to the radio or anything. We had less rights than people in jail. So yeah, so it's like at this point, I lost my voice because of what we experienced in the silence, really kind of carried out into my adulthood, and now I'm really excited to use I've just been introspective, and now I'm opening up again and using my skills to bring our community together and to probably do more than I'm even aware of with people like you and those who really, just resonate. So I at this point, I'm just considering myself a facilitator and a catalyst as the best way that I can describe myself.
Well, I don't think anything about you or your description of yourself falls into the category of like air quotes
Yeah.
just,
Yeah. Yeah.
unless it's ultimately just.
And I think it's important to keep learning, like who said that we're supposed to be linear, like a
That's
program?
not even how time works. Yeah. Please fit into this box. Please accept your.
Yeah, who told us to be linear? Oh yeah, brainwashing. Got it. Okay.
Got it. Check. Yeah. But I feel like recently you've been using your voice a ton more. And I
Yeah.
think a lot of what I've been noticing is you trying to extend what you've learned for yourself to the broader community, even outside of survivors, as we
Mm-hmm.
kind of all go into this weird isolation and some are going into exile
Yeah.
sanction.
Yeah. I being kind of born into a family where my dad being a doctor. And I went into the family business. Like from a young age, I was working with people who were sick or really injured or dying. And I developed a perspective that I knew my peers didn't have because of that. It really put me in like a feeling kind of isolated in myself already, and like my experiences of being a caretaker, pretty much for like, that's what I was bred to be. And that's what kind of another reason, like, I turned into a rebel. Like, so with this situation happening and watching the way people react and the way that people respond to just shock and really hard situations, I would say people in general freeze or run or hide. But I'm the person that's learned to run into the problem and run into the fire and be as best as I can a solid foundation for those who are shaking. And I may not have gotten that for myself all the time, but there have been times in my life where people were there for me and were my solid foundation. And so I just see life as it's impermanent, but we have to show up while we're here. And in this time of this COVID-19 experiment, I'll just call it, it's really it's revealing a lot about ourselves to ourselves and how we react in times of trouble. And what I understand about how I show up and react is definitely tied to my experience being in the program and being catapulted out into the unknown, ripped out of my bed, forced out of my bed in the middle of the night and transported across the country, not being told where I'm going. Then the torment and terror sets in a week later of like nobody explaining anything to me, being there, of what this is, why I'm there, why I can't talk to my family, why I'm isolated, and then forced into silence, and then only allowed to speak when I'm forced to in front of a big group. Like, that's the reality we were forced into with this program. And like from the beginning, I just remember that fragmentation from that trauma that happened and occurred in my psyche. And like it took like a week for me to like open my mouth and like had a breakdown and scream and like cry and be like, where am I, what's happening, and just having to cope. And that's why I want to say that anybody who's been in a situation like that, the way that they coped is not a illness and it's not a disease. It's a reaction and it's a coping mechanism. And that's something I kind of want to drive home in conversations that I have, because I feel like the vernacular is incorrect and taken out of context with our Western medicine and the labels they use in order to pretty much, what I think, just manipulate people into believing that they're damaged and ill and diseased, when that's not the case. It's reactions and coping mechanisms. And what I want to do is it be a voice of reason and helping kind of bring some wisdom and shed some light on what helps, what mentors are good to listen to, and how to not let outside forces influence us so much, and realize that because of what we experienced, we're strangely prepared for times of uncertainty. Like, to be quite honest, if we could get all of our program brothers and sisters to break through their programming of like pitting against each other like we were forced to do in order to move through that program, if we could come together, use that same force to come together and like be a force of good, which I see a lot of people doing right now. I see a lot of people stepping up and helping their neighbor. Like, my program brothers and sisters would be my first choice of apocalypse crew
Definitely.
Like if we could just like be kind, that's all it's going to take, because it like we're in a time of uncertainty, but we are used to that. And I know it's created anxiety, but there's solutions for that anxiety. And it's kind of like the point that I want to drive home in this time, if that makes sense.
Oh, that makes total sense. So, I mean, when we're talking about that with like what people can do and what things help and whatnot, do you think we're looking at a difference between survivors and the generalized community? I think there are some things that are very specific to us. And I'm also hoping that there's some things that we have a little bit more experience with. Oh, I don't even know how to put it right, but we've been inoculated, if you will, to a certain amount of the anxieties of the social distancing and isolation and all this jazz. Also, I've seen some survivors be especially triggered though. So obviously everyone's their own person and responds differently. For me, I'm like, what's up? Like, we're good. Like at this stage, I'm not trying to blow anything off, but this is the most panicked I've ever been in my life by any means.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah, no, I hear what you're saying.
I'm almost averse to anything like that. You know, I think it's better if we walk this together and we can learn to have those conversations and get like Liz Ionelli, right? Like, I mean, she has way more together than I ever had. Would she be like, I have it all together all the time? No, because she's actually a mental health professional and she's honest with herself and the rest of the world, right? And we're all a work in progress, but we can get there a little bit faster and a little smoother if we learn from each other.
Yeah, and if we have the right tools and it really was just about a year ago that I really got to a place where I was like, okay, I am done listening to the outside world. I was shut off to everybody else. I found my mentors online and I went into let's just call it seclusion or quarantine. I quarantined myself because I was so upset with the way that I was being treated in my environment, which is usually the case, which was the case for us. Well, the reasons a lot of us got sent to the program is our environment was not supportive of our strengths. So I felt that again last year, and I put myself into this place, but I was in a lot of pain and I was like really feeling very alone and isolated again. And there are so many times where I am triggered and it puts me back in that emotional somatic body of feeling like I'm on lockdown in a facility as a teenager. And I know that this is part of what I have to accept that's been put in my emotional body, and I'm still learning to calm that, and I'm still learning to really do everything I can to uplift my spirits in those moments. And even as a kid, I was like voted class clown, or at least nominated, and it was my coping mechanism. I have learned to have an incredible sense of humor and be able to laugh at the world and really encourage humor as a form of healthcare, apart with as well as everything else I do creatively, painting, singing, dancing, all these things to enrich a sense of well-being. And that's really like something I want to encourage people to do, is focus less on their productivity, focus less on how much money that they make, because like money is good to have for your basic needs, but it doesn't match your worth. And like, I just feel that when we get catapulted into these moments that are unknown, it catapults us into a feeling of like worthlessness or aloneness, or what we start separating ourselves. And what I know is that every single human being is capable of experiencing every single type of emotion that I am or that you are. Like, we're capable of that. Now, whether it's happened or not is a different story based on experience. But I think that because people like you and I have experienced so many different spectrums of emotion that we're capable of relating better. We're capable of relating in general, like across the board, with so many people at different times. So I think that people who struggle with anxiety and depression have superpowers, and they need to like see what type of different types of personality traits have developed because of what they've been through, and recognize that they're an important part of this landscape of life that we're all in together. I hope that makes sense, because it's just true. Like, in the moment,
Shit,
it's
yeah.
hard to see, but hindsight, always, you're gonna see it like down the line, like, oh my God, I'm so much more capable than anyone has ever allowed me to believe, or that I've ever allowed myself to believe. Like, those moments come. And if they haven't come for people, I would challenge them to jog their memory. I do challenge people to jog their memory and think about those times where they feel like they were stronger than anyone has allowed them to believe, or more capable than anyone has allowed them to believe. Or, you know what I'm saying? Like, that's where I like to challenge people to really rethink and their programming.
Yeah, which is so hard though, because the programming was pretty good. I mean,
Yeah,
they were pretty
especially if you're
thorough
there a
there,
long time.
right? hmm Yeah, and a lot of, like you're talking about with our families of origin, a lot of times these programs, unfortunately, are a continuation of the same kinds of abuses and
Right.
neglect.
Well, if you're only used to a certain type of environment, which is abusive, then it's hard to unlearn that. It is. There's no easy path. You know, I've had more than enough of my own emotional mental breakdowns over the years. They've looked all different shades of terrifying to magical. So nothing is linear in this life, but I just think that if you find purpose, if you find divine inspiration and you seek it out, then it's gonna come. And a life with purpose, like, and purpose in itself can be created. And it doesn't have to be what we're told that purpose is, like making a weekly salary or a high and, you know, annual salary or whatever. Purpose can be so much more of a spiritual experience that is like emotionally embodied, and it can be breaking through our fears of connection. It can be through opening yourself up to one new experience a week. It can be reminding yourself to pay attention to when you are mentally being hard on yourself, which is something I have to do a lot. I have to really pay attention to my own, like, self-criticism in my somatic, like, it's subconscious. It's not always conscious, but it's like sometimes just the way we were brought up in abusive environments where we have these emotional programmings that came from people outside of ourselves. I think in general we didn't get the coping skills that we needed. That's a given. The program actually abused us further when we needed more kindness and emotional maturity within the adults around us. This is definitely going to be triggering to people who haven't learned or maybe sought any kind of support or mentorship, or know, like, the right nutrition to give their body. I think majority of the problem is a lot of unknowing. not that it's anybody's fault. I just feel like we're purposefully uneducated in our country, and people like you and me are doing their damnedest to spread awareness to help ourselves and the people around us. And I'm actually offering myself up for one-on-one and group coaching if people are looking for more help in ways to reduce their anxiety and depression, or not just reduce it, but learn how to accept it and learn how to let it pass through you. Because one of the biggest lessons that I have learned is accepting of my intense hurricanes of emotions that come up, and just like being more still and like allowing myself to fucking cry and to not judge myself or shame myself for whatever I feel and my real human feelings and my real human reactions, because nobody ever gave us that nobody ever told us that we're allowed to feel the feelings we have. We have very real human emotions and very real human reactions, and there are ways of coping with them because we didn't have that maturity in the adults around us. The adults around us wanted to get somebody else to take care of it because they were too emotionally immature. Whatever happened, that's what happened in my situation, and I've had to understand that and move forward with other mentorship. And I feel that at this point, I have the confidence and the wisdom and the people around me to be able to offer myself open as a coach / facilitator. So like, this is me actually trying to extend conversation with you in podcasts, but also reaching the public in general if they feel that I can give them the fire they need in order to live with a greater sense of well-being. Okay. And I'm not saying I have it all together, but I understand a lot and I see a lot about unconscious programming, and I understand how to break through it. And we just need each other in order to grow. Yeah.
No, absolutely. I don't know that we need to be looking for gurus or enlightened beings that have it all figured out.
Yeah.
I think
right. No.
Right.
Yeah.
And I feel like, and shame is like the most common byproduct of these kinds of
100%.
experiences or any sort of prolonged
Shame
abuse.
Shame and betrayal are two huge obstacles that I still have to pay attention to and how it comes up in different ways inside of me. Some days I get away with it not coming up at all, but I mean, right out of the program, oh my God, like I couldn't go anywhere or go to work or anything without being hyper vigilant about everybody around me and everything around me. And I burnt myself out just in paranoia of, oh my God, doing something wrong. Always worried about doing something wrong, no matter how small it is. And that still comes up at times. But over the years, I've gotten a hold of it more. And I got a hold of it more when I started taking care of myself in the nutritional sense, in the just spiritual sense, all these different ways, radical lifestyle transformations. My godfather Verl says that he's in the entertainment industry, and he says, you've reinvented yourself more than anybody else that I've ever known. There's nothing that you're not capable of. But there's been so many times he's told me that where I'm just like, I just feel crazy. Like, I just feel like a crazy person. Like, I'm just out here experimenting. But you know what? I think that experimentation is the root of genius. And I think that failing is like, it's a step in trying. And to me, it's better than stagnation. I mean, sometimes you have to rest. Sometimes you go through so much trauma. All you can do, like, there are times for me, all I could do in the morning was first thing was roll over, turn my phone on, turn on YouTube, listen to some sort of inspirational video that resonated with me in order to help me put my feet on the ground, get in the shower or go to the gym or something. Like, no matter if I was crying on the way to work or to the gym, like, I would just force myself to go. And that's kind of been my MO. It's like, I don't give a shit how bad I feel. I'm going to show up. I don't care if I have tears in my eyes. I'm going to show up. And it makes people uncomfortable. I'm not going to lie. I make people very uncomfortable. And probably get more people on a podcast that I've made uncomfortable. But some of those people have seen my purpose in being authentic and being genuine and showing my real raw emotions, because there's something that I've always known is that there's strength in authenticity, and there's strength in not giving a shit about feeling hurt and admitting that, because I want change. Like, if something hurts me enough to where I'm going to like show up crying, then that means that I want change and I'm looking for a solution. And I think that that's where we're at right now collectively as the human race. Like, we are so freaked out and there's so much uncertainty, and we are having to be really, really real with ourselves about what we do next. And it's making people be introspective. And you know what? I think that's a good thing. I hope that people are, I don't expect everybody to be able to handle this situation rationally. And I think there's a lot of people that are going to react and be abusive to those around them. But there's an opportunity here for others to really look at themselves and say, how can I be more of a leader? And I'm seeing that around me happening, and it gives me hope.
So I feel like a lot of collaboratively what you're talking about is actually like unpacking and reframing how we not only look at the psyche, but mental health and trauma.
Yeah, because I just think that our, whatever you want to call healthcare system, is not complete. And I think there's always room for improvement. And I think that what I've learned that's helped me most is like somatic awareness and paying attention to mentors who are speaking on that type of, like, they call it like integration. It's like somatic integration. So you end up having to really revisit your past and moments where you feel triggered, and whatever's coming up for you, it's like a clear sign of what happened to you in your childhood. And so much of how we respond to the world is in a reflection of how we respond to either our mother or father. And instead of looking at the reality of what's actually going on in front of us, and people do that with like the government. People will look at politicians running, and they'll identify with one, and then they'll like project and their same feelings onto that person that they do, like, say, their father. I'm just gonna put it this way. I feel like most people in our childhood were forced to be something that we're not, that we were forced to comply, that we were who we were as a real authentic person were not supported in general. Like, that's generally the story that I get with most people that I speak to. And in that regard, it forces you as a child to have to cope in order to survive. Because if you upset the parents, then what happens? Then you get punished. However your parents decided was their good idea of punishment. So it's like, in understanding how we project our experiences onto the world, it can help reframe the reality of what we're actually experiencing. Is Trump really a good president, or are you just projecting that because you have faith in authority figures? Because someone like me doesn't.
Right. Yeah.
People like us have zero like faith in authority figures, and we question everything about them. And so some of us have put ourselves in positions of leadership because we didn't have adults around us to be able to be that for us. And honestly, I really admire people that did. I admire that. Like, my best friend had that. Friends that have great, but we're the equalizers. Different perspectives matter. So I just encourage people who have been through serious, complex trauma to rethink their shame around it, to rethink the fact that they had to cope, that they weren't bad because of their experiences, but that the people around them didn't know how to react. So, I don't want to be that adult. I'm a grown-ass woman now. And like, the last thing I want is to be viewed as like anything less than capable, because I know that the fact that I'm still alive when so many of my peers have either taken their lives or are fallen into a cycle of really bad addiction, that's, like, I feel that I've worked really hard to spare my life. To be quite honest, I've worked really hard to spare my life. And I feel that so many of my program brothers and sisters have that ruthless resilience in them, even though if they don't see it that way. So many of us are caretaking for the people around us and are like parenting our parents, or you know what I mean? Like, put into this position, and we're doing our best, but we feel isolated to begin with. And that's what I want to break through. And that's why I feel like this COVID-19 situation is the perfect opportunity for us to connect and use the tools we have to do that. So I'm very hopeful, but I also look at the reality of what's happening, and this is uncertainty. For sure.
Woo, yes. Okay. So I feel like when I look at those of us, I'm speaking for myself, not necessarily you, but a lot of us and myself, I had my own back in the program, and I really was like, fuck you guys, you can't take my identity from me.
Yeah.
But magically, their brainwashing had still worked.
Sure.
And it took me over a decade to even even consider that option.
Oh,
and so
yeah.
And so I talked to my therapist today, and one of the things we were talking about with the service work and the taking care of others is she was like, when you guys, especially in these programs, are in these highly abusive authority, like power, like struggles, you're taught that everyone else is more important than you.
Yes.
And that your job is to serve others. And for those of us, especially who are service people anyway, that are just born this way, that is the only time you get any relief in that situation, and any situation of abuse, or feel good in any kind of a way when you're doing for another.
Yeah. Yeah. It's definitely something I, over time, have had to recognize. And for me, it started way before the program. I was definitely being groomed to have the mindset that I need to tone myself down, take care of other people, make sure everybody else around me feels good, that I'm a nice girl, this and that, and like not really being my authentic self. So I not just from the program. I've come from like a whole lifelong past of it. And I turned 16 and got a taste of freedom, and like I started changing, man. I started running away, and that's what got me sent away. The stuff I was doing when I was like trying to have my sense of self. So and like escape the abuse I was in when my parents abusive with each other. So it's also, that's what's kept me silent, is because I've always been very much more concerned about my parents' feelings and their reputation than really expressing where I've come from, what I've experienced, and how it shaped me. And so I've broken through that, and what it took for me to break through being worried about the opinions of other people is a lot of fucking abuse.
Enough. It was enough abuse.
Enough and too much. But it was from after into my young adulthood, with lovers, or with the people I thought loved me, like people that I confided into, be my safety, who turned out to over and over again abuse me. Like, it has been over and over abuse, and I'm not gonna like hide that. In my days to come, I'm going to be very explicit about the experiences that I had of because of the programming that I experienced, and what I was told was like, not told, but like what you're not aware of, that you're not aware of in yourself. That's what's so crazy about our minds, is that there's so much that we're not aware of, and it just takes so much time and experience, and being like, oh my God, I'm in this, people call it a cycle of like attracting what you're used to. But if you don't know what you're overlooking, like, it's just going to keep happening because that's what you're used to. And for people who've experienced a lot of abuse, like a lot of abuse in their childhood and on up, like it becomes uncomfortable to place yourself around people who are actually looking out for your own best interest. If you're not used to that, that can be very uncomfortable, because you're on your toes waiting for the ball to drop. And that's one thing that I've noticed about program survivors, is that they live with a sense of waiting for the ball to drop, with like being on edge for the next abusive situation to happen. And that ends up with us putting ourselves around people who are abusive, or situations that are abusive. And that's a really hard cycle to break. And I'll definitely open up about a lot of my experiences that I was unconscious in, and am still becoming conscious to my own unconsciousness. So this is a long, long journey, and it may be a lifelong journey. But at least I'm going to die on my feet and not live on my knees to manipulation, deception, and gaslighting, and shame, which is really what a lot of program survivors have experienced.
And keep experiencing.
Yeah.
Because our hypervigilance isn't based on like misplaced paranoia.
Mm-hmm.
It's based on learned experience.
Exactly.
So we definitely can't discount it. So now what we're up against, though, not just survivors, but the whole collective, is like, God, we don't want mass public paranoia or panic, right?
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, like, what we can do in this time within ourselves and within our communities to take this as an opportunity to manifest some new possibilities instead of collapse upon ourselves.
Yeah. Well, I think that part of this experience is accepting that some parts of our system and reality are collapsing. being okay with change is, I think, a learned skill. But it's the reality of accepting the world that we live in. If you can't accept that things are going to change unexpectedly, then what reality are we really living in? Because I do speak for myself when I say my life changes drastically very quickly, and I've allowed that to continue to be in different ways. I move a lot. The work that I do takes me different places to help different groups of people, and facilitate, community healing type of gatherings. So I think that one of the wisest mindsets we can cultivate is the acceptance of change, and really being okay with living simply. People who hold on to possessions, there's things going on there that is emotional, that they're very uncomfortable with themselves, that they feel like they have to grasp onto material possessions. And maybe I've gotten too comfortable with letting go of possessions, but I have a sense of more freedom than a lot of people I know because of it. And being able to adapt to change is the definition of evolution. It's not survival of the fittest, it's survival of the most capable and willing to adapt. So change is a spiritual, physical embodiment. And we are in a great time of change, and we've been put here, I believe, on this earth during this time, because we're capable of handling it, no matter how incapable we feel at times. So that's just kind of how I look at things. And there's no easy answer, but there are tools to help us be able to cope. And I just feel like that's a whole other podcast.
Oh, well, we've got like a million. I'm not even sure if we can stay on a topic for a podcast. Like, good luck,
I know.
Yeah. I know that when we were talking earlier, if there's anything that we could offer up to or relate to with other survivors going through, sometimes for some of them, a somewhat reenactment of the most traumatizing experiences of their lives, right? And then also, I'm sure that there are wisdoms that survivors have learned that we could offer to the generalized community, because so many people, this is like completely abnormal for them. Do you remember that first week or two at the program where your mind is just like, no, this isn't real. No, this isn't really happening. Like, there's this cognitive dissonance that's so prolonged that I wonder if the rest of the community is kind of dealing with that now too.
I would say yes. That's kind of what I'm picking up on with people, is like, they don't know what to do with themselves, but they have more of a sense of freedom even with this situation than we experienced on our lockdown. And, some of the programs were much more just intensely abusive than others. It's just different ranges of abuse, I guess you could say.
I like to call them like flavors,
Yeah.
I had a mint chocolate chip. Mint chocolate chip isn't as like potentially controversial as maybe pistachio.
Yeah.
Might be in some places.
What flavor
but some
of
people...
child torment and abuse did you experience?
Totally. I mean, am I thrilled and so grateful that I wasn't sent to Tranquility Bay or Casa by the Sea or Mount Bachelor? Yes, absolutely. Although I have no idea, because also these programs that, like ours, when we say it's less like the family school, we're like, well, it was less physically abusive, at least when we were there, right? And certainly throughout time compared to some of the WASP programs. I'm really freaked out by the long-term effects of these programs that
Exactly.
focus on the psychological.
Exactly, because it was so much psychological, like whatever the shelter was for the kids was different. You know, was your shelter a cage, or was it a little cabin where you were isolated? It's like the feelings were the same. It just looked different. And so I don't think that anybody had it better or worse than the other. We experienced a lot of the same things. And the long-term effects is definitely more than I am even aware of. But I'm becoming more aware of myself and what I've experienced with time and with connecting with people like yourself and having more conversations. And I'm okay with allowing myself to relive these moments that my mind suppressed in order to survive. I want to, because I want to remember so that I can have a greater sense of self in relation to where I am now from then. Because inevitably we grow. Like, whether we're conscious of it or not, we've experienced so much more since then. And the way that my mind connects and has disconnected things, I keep wanting to dive into conversations with people and hear their stories so that I can relate more and get a clearer picture of, you know, what was really going on. Because even since just listening to some of your podcasts, I've remembered some things that I experienced. And I think that it's valid. It's more valid to recognize and remember what your mind suppressed than to just allow things to be swept under the rug. And that's kind of like where I got a year ago. I really got, I let my emotions fuel me, and I became very upset about how my parents have swept my experience under the rug, and how I've had to face every single emotional turmoil in my life pretty much on my own, without anybody else's guidance except for my sister-in-law, thank God. But child psychologist. So thank God.
Yeah. Oh no, seriously. Thank God.
There's so much that I faced on my own. And so I can only imagine what my brothers and sisters from the programs have experienced and stood their ground and like loved themselves through. Like, there's superpowers there. And I want to just open myself up as a kind of like a conduit and a storyteller for people who have experiences that they want to speak about. Like your podcast, I want to speak with you, but like I'm starting a podcast and I want to invite people to speak with me.
Yeah.
You know, and it's all about who you resonate with and who you feel comfortable speaking with. And I just think our stories are so powerful and so real. And I really want to be a helping hand in bringing awareness to this subject, but also helping create legislation change to bring more oversight to these families, usually, who are running these facilities and profiting on this multi-billion-dollar industry of child abuse. And within this work that I'm doing during this time where people are going on lockdown and they're worried about COVID-19, like, I could not think of another, like a more interestingly inspiring moment than this, because it's moments like these that really make me go, life is fucking short. And how do I want to go down? Do I want to speak my truth and put it out there and be real about who I am, or do I want to die with regret? I'll be damned if I die with regret. You know, maybe not everybody can speak their truth, but I can, and I can speak my truth with people and help others speak their truth. And that's what I'm here for. I'm here to help bring people together and feel less alone. Because damn it, man, I have felt so alone. And it's like getting connected on these Facebook groups and being part of hashtag breaking code silence. It has given me hope in like this way I didn't expect a year ago when I was in this dark, isolated place, just out of nowhere. I thought, I'll just look on Facebook and see if there's any groups for WASP program people. And all of a sudden, I'm realizing that there's thousands of us who are calling ourselves survivors and coming together and speaking our truth and using our voice. And I started chiming in more. And now I'm part of nonprofits, and now I'm part of podcasts, and now I'm starting my own. And I just only see good things happening from people being more willing to put themselves out there than hide.
Amen. Yeah, whether you're putting yourselves out there externally with the rest of the world, or you're diving deep and going right into the fire internally and taking down your own shit. I agree. I think this is definitely the time for like a last break towards being absolutely courageous. Like it's the last chance you get.
It's a great time to practice, that's for sure. And it's a great time to practice asking for what you need. Because that's so much a part of what happened in the program was we were not getting our needs met. And I definitely was taught to repress my needs. But needs are needs. And if you need to connect with someone and speak your truth and your story with somebody, and you've never done that before, and you feel that, like, the need for safe connection is so huge. So huge. So I'm just at this place where I'm just feeling very open and really excited to speak with as many people as I can and bring people together in like a very intentional way. I intend on creating more community gatherings in the future. I want to create gatherings specifically, like workshops specifically focused for survivors of these programs to release this trauma that is stored in their body in very unconventional ways and in ways that will be very healing, because perhaps the only experience they got in a group setting was the program, which was very traumatizing. Perhaps what I envision, what I feel my purpose is, can offer a opportunity for real healing and integration to occur. So I just wanted to plant that seed out there, that I have a lot of vision about my purpose and bringing this community together. And it's definitely multifaceted. So I'm looking for people with multiple skills. I'm looking for people with multiple talents or just visions and drives who hear this message and want to help. My thing is music and dancing and holistic medicine and sustainable living and ceremony. And so, like, I'm envisioning like amazing things for people like us. And I just want to share that because I want to inspire more than just discussion. I want to bring us together.
Yes, in a way where we're not dragged there in the middle of the night against our will. So if people are hearing this and they're ready to reach out to you, how can they get in contact?
The best way immediately would be email. My email is livefreebewell@gmail.com. Live Free Be Well is my brand. I started with my holistic practice, and it just really suits my mission. I want people to live free and be well. livefreebewell@gmail.com, and then from there, just send me an email about what this inspired in you, and I'll be happy to have a phone conversation from there.
Yeah, awesome. I really do hope people reach out to you because I think this is one of those points where if we can find voices and people that we can vibe with,
Yeah.
I don't know. I think we've been inching into this like virtual reality, like virtual community, social media land for a while now. But if people are genuinely going to be physically separated for prolonged periods, I think that a lot of new relationships and new projects and new movements are going to
most
come
definitely.
out of
and I think that it needs to right now so that we can have in person, like come together in person, because something that I find that I definitely need is more in person, safe contact with people in person, because I get so just like into texting, too much texting. That's why I think speaking like through FaceTime or Zoom, which I offer in my coaching, is wonderful, because it gives you at least a little bit more face-to-face interaction, and there's more emotion and connection and like consciousness that occurs, and rather than just texting. So that's why I really encourage people to start calling people and FaceTiming more. I think we hide behind our phones and computers too much.
Yeah, I'm actually on a positive kind of excited that some of us are going to get to spend a lot more time with our families, and hopefully that'll be a positive. I know that we're also concerned about the potential for more abuse because we're trapped with our family, if that's how we feel about it. But maybe we're reaching a point where, at least in Western society, we don't have to have all these, toxic sham families running around traumatizing future generations of constituents. Like maybe it would be beneficial to reevaluate your relationship if it's not going well because you guys are playing too many games
definitely
together
important to
over
always
break.
reevaluate our relationships, because if it's not for the greater of your well-being and you know it and you're in denial of it, man, I can go into a whole other podcast about that.
Yeah. Everything needs to be a whole other podcast, but we just wanted to reach out to everybody and let them know that we're feeling it. And if you feel Infinity, please reach out to her directly. We are as well. Like we're not supposed to be gatekeepers here.
Yeah.
We're trying to be a conduit with this podcast. So like we don't need to be in the middle, although we love monkey in the middle with her.
Okay.
Great,
so my email is livefreebewell8. So livefreebewell8@gmail.com. I apologize. I forgot the number 8, but like the infinity sign.
7 other people got there before you. I'm sure that you and I will be getting back together untroubled, like probably in the next couple days.
Yeah, I'd like to go into my story about the lifeboat process that I experienced. livefreebewell8@gmail.com. That's how you can reach me.
I know. That's why I was like, we can't even do just the testimonial stuff tonight, because like that lifeboat thing, we both need to like meditate before we go into that call. I appreciate it.
Definitely.
Well, it's all a team effort, you guys. Like we need to rock this together, or we're not going to be able to finish the game. And I also want to say
something about the team effort thing. I'm not going to be here to try to convince anyone to understand me that's committed to misunderstanding. And I'm also never going to encourage anyone to tone down what they've experienced. I want everyone to speak their truth. I think it's important. And that's it. That's how I want to end that.
Yeah, I wasn't even there. I've just heard about it from other people and read about it in books.
We got a lot ahead of us. I'm really excited. I'm proud of you for stepping up and speaking up.
No, that's super important. I think that you're touching on a really important part of this, is that the reason I think that this trauma is so long-term withstanding without ever being addressed is because of the extreme lack of validation.
Yes, we were gaslit. So all of us, we were told that our feelings were invalid. Shut the hell up and follow orders. That's what we were taught. Yep.
And they were wrong, and they were liars.
Yep.
And you're adults now, guys.
It's in our power.
So let's
proud of us. Love you, girl. Thanks so much for this. Yep.